Right now on Sports Extra, the Hawks are red hot, playing some of the best basketball of the season. Have they turned their season around, and how have they done it? Also, it's over. The Joseph Martinez era for Atlanta United has officially come to an end. We're taking a look back on his lasting impact for the Five Stripes. Also, is it baseball season yet? A busy weekend at Truist Park gave us a chance to catch up with the team as it prepared for spring training. We've got a busy show. Come and join us. Sports Extra starts now. Yes, sir. Welcome on in, everybody. I'm Reggie Chatman. This is Sports Extra. With the Falcons in Georgia officially done, more eyes are now on the Atlanta Hawks, and they are finally starting to play like many of us expected them to do this season. Let's get right into it. Allow me to direct your attention to this. The Atlanta Hawks are winners of 7 of their last 10 games and are finally back to being over 500 and for the first time in 2023. And also, the injury bug seems to have disappeared from State Farm Arena. Trae Young says this is what they've been waiting for.
We've been good. I think it's been, like I said, it's going to take time, and we've been having, more and more games under our belt, and we've had everybody get back healthy these last few games, and I think it's been really helpful. And we've just been waiting for CC to get back, and he's gotten back, and it's been really good for us. So we just got to keep it going one game at a time.
Joining me now, we've got two guys with plenty of opinions. Joe Patrick from 92.9 The Game, and John Michael from 680 The Fan. Guys, John, we'll start with you. Hawks have been playing good basketball. What is maybe the biggest thing that's changed over the last week and a half?
I think for me, it's finally taking the identity that they have and really running with it. And that's pretty simple. It's got to be, you look at a scenario where you're an offensive basketball team. The Hawks haven't been a good defensive team, no matter whether it's Clint Capella, Onyeka Okongwu, no matter what. But what they can be is a really good offensive team with Trae Young and obviously DeJounte Murray starting to really get themselves settled in and playing well together. I was at the MLK game. They just didn't miss shots. They're taking good shots and turning them into great shots. They're turning great shots into dunks. And when you're able to do that, you're going to win a lot of basketball games. If they can play like this for a nice stretch, they can go from 5-6 in a row to maybe they win like 10 out of 12 and make a move up the Eastern Conference.
Joe, it feels like we've had so many bad things surrounding this team over the last couple of weeks, everything with Nate and Trae and just all the different things that we've been talking about. But winning has kind of erased some of that. How much does winning help with keeping some of the negativity out of here?
Yeah, no doubt. It definitely kind of quells that down a bit. And I think that, when you look at this winning run that the Hawks have been on, it's no surprise that it's come with this team being healthy. Like you said, Reggie, when Clint Capella came back, this team has looked totally different. And I think they're 13-3 or something like that when they've had all their pieces so far this year. And that's been a big thing for the Hawks. Even if you go back to last year, they had this big injury crisis, or I don't know if you call it an injury with it being COVID and stuff, but they've had players that have missed, large amounts of players who have missed time at the same time. And so it's nice to see this team kind of getting themselves back together and starting to fire on all cylinders like you were talking about, John.
John, you heard Trae talk about it. The team is finally getting healthy. Clint Capella comes back in this lineup and he makes a difference. How much of a difference do you think it is just having him out there on the floor, whether as he's continuing to ramp up the minutes that he's playing?
Yeah, obviously it's huge. He's a guy that can be a rim protector, which becomes gigantic for him. They don't really have any type of perimeter defense that deters teams from getting to the paint when they want to. But if Clint Capella's there and he's healthy and can block shots and give you 25 to 30 minutes, you got a defensive catalyst that can go out there and really anchor a team that needs it in the worst way. One thing, though, I'm not going to get caught up in. I think last year, Joe and I were talking off the air. I think this team had won 8 games in a row prior to the trading deadline, and then they stood pat. You want to think about trying to win championships, not just get out of the play-in round. If there's a piece to be traded or if there's a move to be made, I'd do it in a heartbeat if I'm the Hawks.
Now, one of the moves that they made during this offseason was to bring in a guy named DeJounte Murray, and he has been fantastic, really this season, but especially over the last couple of weeks. Joe, what do you think you like most about his game? It feels like he's bringing everything to the table when it comes to the Hawks. He's
really become a fan favorite in short order here in Atlanta, and I think part of it is just his demeanor on the court and the way he kind of expresses himself when he plays the game. He's kind of he's not looking for the highlights necessarily, although he's going to provide that kind of stuff. He's a dog. He wants to go out there and win these games, and he's got that kind of tenacious attitude that I think a lot of Hawks fans have felt like this team has lacked for the last couple of years. You've got a player in Trae Young who is the superstar, but DeJounte Murray brings a little bit of extra juice with him, as well as his play and his ability to distribute. And I think we're starting to see the signs of how he can kind of interplay with Trae Young on the court to get the best out of both of them.
It feels like they've been starting to try and figure out what it looks like going forward. Trae has quietly played really well as well. what is it about his game that he's doing now that he's got some time to really play alongside DeJounte?
Not take as many crazy shots. We love Trey. Don't get me wrong. Ice Trey, shooting the 30-footers, knocking them down. That's all great. But there's time when it's called winning basketball and making winning plays. And I think a lot of times, especially last year, Trey got caught up in, I've got to be the guy at all times. Well, now all of a sudden he realizes coming down, there may be a moment where dishing the ball to DeJounte Murray and him taking a big shot ends up being the winning play. If Trey can cut down on some of the turnovers, the sky's the limit for this backcourt. This is one of the best backcourts in the NBA.
Joe, we have to talk about Nate McMillan. I mean, there's been rumors that he wants to try and retire maybe at the end of this year. I mean, he's been a guy that gets under a lot of scrutiny, especially after that loss to the Hawks, to the Hornets a couple nights ago, where they blow that massive lead. He's not calling timeouts. I mean, is Nate the problem in some of these losses, or has he kind of found a way to use this lineup as it currently sits to play well?
I think you can make an argument one way or another, because you can also make the argument that a couple years ago he was one of the pieces who comes into this team replacing Lloyd Pierce, and all of a sudden the team starts to play great. They make this run. They're one game away and potentially one injury away from going to the NBA Finals. So, he's kind of shown that he can do the job. But again, you point to that game last night against the Hornets. There was a play, at the very end of the game, the inbounds pass. It just wasn't, to me, a well-designed play to try to get a shooter or get the ball to a shooter. And you had Trae Young as the guy who's inbounding the ball there, who you would think would be the guy that you're trying to get the ball to. So, yeah, I think there are legitimate criticisms you can have of Nate at this point.
Well, I think now for 2 years in a row, you've had conversations that maybe Trey and Nate McMillan don't get along that well. Obviously the stuff that kind of blown up when Trey didn't appear at one of the games and he didn't want to talk about it, and we understand all of that. This league, superstars run the league. This is different in the NFL. The NBA, if you've got one superstar, the coach better find a way to get along with him, because there are very few coaches in this league. Greg Popovich, maybe Eric Spoelstra, that really have that cachet. Steve Kerr maybe being another, that have that cachet that can say, I'm going to be the guy and not the superstar. I think for Nate, I hate to say know your role a little bit, but maybe when it comes to him and Trey, he has to back off just a hair.
They did do some work over the offseason to try and create a better relationship. They met up in Oklahoma City and had an opportunity to really talk and figure out what they wanted this year to look like. Some bumpy road here and there, but it feels like they're starting to at least figure it out, or at least winning is starting to mask it. All right, we're talking about icons in the city. Let's actually switch gears to the pitch. To the news that many were expecting, but it became official this week. Arguably the face of Atlanta United, Joseph Martinez, is moving on and joining Inter Miami CF. Martinez has been with United since 2017 and racked up accolade after accolade for the Five Stripes. Here's the club's vice president, Carlos Bocanegra, on the decision to use one of its offseason buyout on Martinez.
Joseph hurt his knee. It was COVID. He came over. We sat in my backyard and we're actually having a cigar and just chatting about it. At some point, this day will come. That's professional sports, and we're going to have to part our ways. Unfortunately, the time is now, and this chapter is to a close.
Joe, I'm curious, for people that maybe weren't here or didn't get to see the height of his power here in the city, what was that he did so well? Why did he become such an icon in this city, and what are we going to miss with him leaving?
Reggie, it's kind of funny because Joseph Martinez came to Atlanta and nobody knew who he was. He was a guy who was kind of floundering on the bench of an Italian team, a Venezuelan national who had played in Switzerland and things. He wasn't a brand name, but he made himself into one because of the kind of flair that he played with and the kind of panache that he had when he scored the goals and the things that he would do to just energize the crowd. And it's not just his sprints and the things that he would do physically on the field, but it's just that all that extra, the bravado, that's the kind of thing that really makes a superstar what he is. And of course, he backed it up with his play on the field. He won the Golden Boot in 2018. He won an MLS MVP in 2018. And then of course the team wins MLS Cup that year. So he had all the accolades to back up everything. It's just really unfortunate that he had this knee injury, this ACL tear right at the beginning of the pandemic, and was never able to be the same guy since.
To me, he was the face. He was the one that made Atlanta United fun. I know Miguel Almiron was a big part of that as well. Their connection was huge, and Miguel went on to play overseas as well. But Joseph was the one that, if you were a casual soccer fan like I was, I wanted to go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium because Little Joe, and he's a little dude, but that dude was out and he was scoring and he was the face of this franchise. It's going to be missed. You were right. The knee injury sapped kind of who he was, and it was never the same. But you love to see what he did. He brought a championship here to Atlanta, and you wish him best of luck down in Miami.
Joe, I want to ask you before we finish up this segment.
Yep.
What do you think this does for this team? How can they kind of respond? And maybe your expectation for this upcoming season. I've seen you tweet about how you think Miles and Brad might not get back to 100%. What does the team look like going into this year?
You know, it's very interesting. This team is right now in the process of clearing a ton of payroll. They've really built things up because they've been trying to win championships, and they got to a point where they kind of got the water up to above their necks, and they need to try to breathe again. So what they've done with this Joseph Martinez deal and with some other players on the team is just move out some of the biggest salaries on this team. The new president, Garth Lagerwey, who came in this offseason, referred to it as a reset. But I still think that this team is going to be very competitive. They've still got a guy who won a World Cup, who's one of the best playmakers in the league on this team. They've still got a ton of talent, but it's just going to be a reset in terms of juggling some of these big pieces on the roster, and you might have to wait a little bit longer, maybe into the summer months before this team can replace the guy who's going to be the guy who takes the place of Joseph.
We're in Atlanta, and we don't like to call things rebuilds. This is a reset. So,
heard that before.
Yeah, we've heard that before. From the same team that plays in the same stadium.
I was going to say, same owner.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Anyway, coming up next, we're inching closer to baseball season, so we're heading to Fan Fest to catch up with the Braves as we get closer to spring training. Welcome back to Sports Extra, everybody. Let's talk about some baseball. Braves Fest was held this weekend. We got to hear from the majority of the team for the first time since their NLDS loss to Philly. We've got plenty of sound, so we'll play a bite and get reaction from the guys. Let's start with this.
I mean, it's great. You already know what kind of person and player he is already. I mean, both Arcia or Von Gresham. I mean, you just play together, and it goes from there. Couple games, 2-3 weeks, should be good.
I'm blessed to be able to have that experience going into this year, potentially trying out for short, and just to have that somewhat comfortability, it's just that's what a lot of it is. It's just being comfortable.
All right, guys, that second base position was a little bit in flux last year. This year, it's shortstop. We'll talk about Dansby in a second, but John, I want to start with you on this. We got a couple of guys going for that shortstop position. What are you hoping to expect or hoping to see from the guys trying out?
I want to see the Von Grissom I saw for the first 25 or so games. My positivity with him is pretty simple. This is a guy that in the middle of a pennant race came up and gave you production. Now, it kind of tapered off as the year went along and Snit decided to go with Orlando Arcia. There's not as much pressure in April coming out. If he gets off to a 200 start and it takes him a little while, guess what? The former shortstop here had the same problem a year ago. So I need Vaughn to play 135 games. Let Orlando Arcia split maybe 20 games at second base, 25 games at shortstop, somewhere in there, and let this roll. I think with Vaughn, it's the guy that's going to be hitting ninth most of the year. What kind of pressure does he have? Not a lot.
Yeah, totally. I have the same thing. I'm not concerned really about the bat. And the thing about the bat is that he actually has a good contact profile on his bat. He's not going to strike out a ton like you would see from a lot of young players. So, and yeah, he's not going to be in a position where he's put in a lot of pressure to produce like you would if you were, Dansby Swanson, who's been a key player for this team for a long time. So I think it's mainly defensively. As long as he's doing his job defensively and not making, silly errors, then I think the job is going to be his for the majority of the season.
Unfortunately, that's something that the guy that just left did a lot of. Let's hear about Dansby Swanson.
He's taught everybody in the clubhouse how to respect the game and how to pull on the same rope, basically. We all hope nothing but the best for him. We all understand it's a business. I mean, if we didn't learn with what happened with Freddie, how much of a business this is, and you learned it from Dansby.
I've learned a lot from Dansby. Still talk to him quite often. And like I said, very thankful for the time that I got to spend with him. Like I said, he's an unbelievable baseball player, even better guy.
All right, the Dansby era is over. Joe, what is this team missing?
So when it comes to Dansby Swanson, replacing Dansby Swanson, we just talked about Von Grissom. It's not Von Grissom who needs to replace Dansby Swanson. It's somebody else on this Braves roster who's got to bring what those Braves players were just talking about, the professionalism, the competitiveness, the day-to-day kind of approach that Dansby brings to the game and brings to that clubhouse. That's, to me, kind of the wait and see what we get from these guys in that clubhouse.
John, his legacy, what will we remember about Dansby Swanson his time here in Atlanta?
He's a winner. Point blank, just flat out, he is a winner. When this team made their ascent back to being World Series champions, think about Dansby in Game 4 hitting a home run to tie it up. We were there going crazy. He came up with some of the biggest plays at the biggest moments. He's a winner, and he will be missed.
Yeah, and he's a guy that was a local guy. I mean, how cool is it for him to be able to play here and represent the city, man? I mean, really, really cool stuff. All right, our next bite. Let's do it.
But Murphy, I know we got a Gold Glove catcher. I heard he's a tremendous person, and that's what I've observed and have felt. he's going to surprise, I think, a lot of us with how good of a player he is. Both of us just want to win and bring another title back here.
Yeah, we're excited to work together. I've heard nothing but good things about this catching room, and all the guys, Steven and Shay, gave me glowing reviews about all the guys over here, so I can't wait to get to work.
All right, we've got a new catching dynamic here in Atlanta. Travis d'Arnaud, of course, is still here. In comes Sean Murphy. They make that trade. John, what kind of player is he, and what should we expect from him this year?
Yeah, for everything I've read about him, and full disclosure, I haven't seen a lot of A's baseball.
You're not watching, staying up late for the A's?
I was saying, judging by the city of Oakland, not many of them have seen many A's games either. Great defensive catcher, a guy that can come in and hit the ball as well. Not going to hit for a huge average, but he's a guy that's going to put contact and have some power. But I think more than anything, it's the defensive duty, being able to give Travis some days off in those dog days, or flip side. Let Sean get some days off when Travis can get behind the plate. I love it. The biggest thing here is, you walk in, you come from a place where there was zero expectations to a place now that there's one thing, and that's to win a World Series.
I mean, the guy that they got from the A's last year also did pretty well, so maybe they'll be able to work it out. All right, we got one more soundbite. Let's talk about the rookies.
Yeah, I think the big one is just, efficiency for sure. I have the stuff to get deep into games, and adding the changeup consistently and finding that pitch, getting it to the same level as the slider is going to help, and that's something I've obviously focused on. And
yeah, I think it really sunk in after winning the Rookie of the Year, because you can only win that award once, and there's only one winner on each side. So, coming up in the middle of the season and winning an award like that, I'm just trying to improve. I guess next year I'm gonna find a way to do that.
Look, I said rookies, but they're not rookies anymore.
Right,
I mean, Michael Harris, Spencer Strider were two of the best rookies in baseball. Joe, I mean, what can they bring this season? Maybe the next step for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new challenge for these guys this year. Now there's a little bit more pressure on them, I think, to perform, because they've shown what they can do. They've shown that they're, at the top of their class as far as rookies were concerned last year, obviously, producing these monster years. And now it will be interesting to see how those guys handle that expectation. There's always injury concerns and things like you have there with the pitchers, but honestly, I don't really have any concern with these guys, the way they were able to come up and produce last year in a Braves team that really needed to start racking up the wins when they came up. And that's what really gives me a lot of hope for these guys. By the way, it's just so great to see Spencer Strider's mustache again.
Yeah, it's really, really, really good. All right, I think it's going to be another really good Braves team. All right, coming up next, we got a couple more blocks to go. Reggie's Agenda makes its triumphant return to Sports Extra, and I got some Georgia agendas I'm pushing your way. That's coming up next after the commercial break. Welcome back to everybody watching us on Sports Extra, and welcome back to the hottest segment in sports talk television. It's time for Reggie's Agenda. Now, the basic premise remains the same. We bring the debate from the timeline to the desk, and I give these guys a chance to tell me if I'm pushing the narrative right or wrong. And we'll begin with some Georgia action and a hot topic that seems to come out around this time every single college football season. Players decide to transfer in and out of programs for a better situation. Of course, the Dogs had some guys leave, most notably A.D. Mitchell, Dominic Blaylock, Eric Gilbert, and Nationals on Twitter complained and refused to wish them luck despite helping their team to 2 titles. And all I have to say is it's time to calm down. These are kids coming off the back-to-back titles. Let them do whatever the heck they want. John?
Yeah, it's 2023. This thing called the transfer portal, it's here to stay. Get over yourselves. These kids did just help you win back-to-back national championships. Oh, by the way, Kirby Smart went and got 2 receivers, and Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett. So maybe he already knew that some of this was coming down the pike. Lay off these kids, man. Lay off. They got rings for you. You can celebrate them now.
There's so many better things you can do with your time than complain about this kind of thing and complain to them on Twitter and everything. It never ceases to amaze me. Like college football fandom, there's just seems to be something about it that gets people on a personal level where you had to come at kids like this. But yeah, I mean, they've done so much for the school. You just applaud them and tip your hat and thank them for their service.
I think it's wild, and you remember in moments like this that Twitter's not a real place, because there's no way they're going to hop in front of these kids and say anything like this to them in real life. But I mean, they're just kids, man.
Maybe
Calm
they
down. Well, yeah, you never know. I mean, John, do you think that for these guys that are leaving, was this the right decision for them?
For A.D. Mitchell, it was, from what I gathered, a family scenario where he wanted to be closer to family. Why? You can't begrudge a kid that's done that. He's already played here. He's given you everything that he had, and he wants to be closer to his family and a young child. That's what you got to do. Anybody else, you know what? If they feel the opportunity is better for them to go play somewhere else, we can't get mad at them. Jermaine Burton transferred last year. Cool. He went to Alabama. Didn't win a title.
Aha! Good luck to him.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yes.
He got scared during the field rushing. Anyway, all right, let's stay with the Dogs. Let's talk about Stetson Bennett, the greatest UGA quarterback ever, in my opinion, and maybe yours as well. Well, following the parade to celebrate a second straight national title, people weren't happy with how he handled himself, holding his phones during the parade and calling out the haters in his speech. Now, finally, Stetson came to defend himself on the timeline, responding to some criticism from Steak Shapiro from 92.9 The Game, poking fun at the host, explaining how he was celebrating in his own way and he meant no disrespect. And I'll tell you right now, I mean disrespect when I say this to everybody listening. Anyone who still wants to complain about Stetson Bennett is a fool. Put some respect on the name of Stetson Fleming Bennett IV. John, you were hyped up about this coming into the show. I feel like I have to ask you about your opinion on this.
Be careful who you're talking to. Be careful who you're talking about. Stetson Bennett, you know what? If he was in the parade and he said he was using the aux cord to control the music, then that's what he was doing. If he wanted to get up there and take shots at media members that didn't believe him, guess what? There's a lot of you out there that didn't believe in him. And the receipts on social media showed that you didn't believe in him. Get over yourselves. You know what? Stetson brought 2 national championships. He will have a Disney movie made after him pretty soon. And a moment on social media like this is just going to be a blip on the Stetson Bennett radar.
Joe, at what point do we stop disrespecting this man? I mean, 2 national titles. I mean, you're in that game against Ohio State. People are telling him to pull him for Brock Vandagriff. I mean, he's been unbelievable in his career. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Right, exactly, Reggie. Like, to me, this is just a sign of, like, people just want to try to find anything they can get on Stetson Bennett. And I don't know why. Like, I don't know why that there seems to be this urge to try to get him for something or to try to criticize him for something. We've heard a lot about, his age with that people have gotten upset about. Like, he's just won 2 national championships, and to criticize him over, like, how he's acting during the parade that you were very happy that he's there to do seems crazy.
We had Doug Gottlieb tweet that he shouldn't have been at the Heisman Trophy ceremony.
Dumb.
Get over yourself. We had, what's the guy's name? Chris Mad Dog Russo say he shouldn't have been there because he was 25. He mispronounced Chris Winke's name, who was a Heisman Trophy winner. How about if you're going to talk about college kids, actually kind of know the game you're talking about?
Maybe
That's
watch
just my
the game.
advice.
Watch the game.
Maybe do that.
Maybe know some ball. Stop being such a casual. All right, well, let's get off our high horse. Anyway, coming up next, wrapping things up with our video week. That's coming up after the commercial break. All right, time for our video of the week. Bills may not have won, but here's a victory in and of itself. That's Damar Hamlin at today's Bills game cheering on his teammates.
Nothing but love. It's one of the coolest moments you'll see in football. Damar, welcome back.
It's a shame they couldn't kind of wrap up the storybook with a win, but that's a win in and of itself, and it just shows there's more about life.
It's also a loss for the city of Atlanta. The AFC Championship game's not going to be here.
Yeah.
Another loss for a championship here in the city. All right, guys, thanks for coming on. Thanks for watching the show. We'll see you guys next week.